I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order.
That's why I took a year off from law school to volunteer with Jesuit missionaries in Honduras. I taught kids how to be welders and carpenters.
Mike Pence and Tim Kaine speaking at their party's national conventions in July. A good lead into our panel. And joining us now, our Power and Politics host, Rosemary Barton, as you know, standing by in Ottawa. From Washington, Louisa Savage, a journalist at Politico. And here with me in Vancouver, Bridget Anderson, general manager of Edelman Vancouver, and U.S. political commentator Michael Meneer. Well, let's start with our guest in Washington. And Louisa, what are you looking for in tonight's debate?
Well, number one, nobody votes for vice president, right? They vote for the top of the ticket. This is a proxy war. So Mike Pence has one job tonight, and that is to change the subject from Donald Trump and make this all about Hillary Clinton and remind Republican voters why they don't like her and why they should still show up and vote, even if they're uncomfortable with some of the things that Donald Trump says. His big challenge is going to be explaining away some of the things that he's said and done over the past week, and also closing the gap between his own traditional conservative policy views and some of the untraditional views that Donald Trump has, as Rosie mentioned earlier, on trade, for example, and that's just one of many. So Donald Trump could have picked Chris Christie to be his running mate. He could have picked Newt Gingrich. Both of those guys wanted the job. Instead, he went with Mike Pence, and it was to have him reach out to traditional conservative Republican voters and shore up the party. For Tim Kaine, it's a different challenge. He's the guy that the left of the party did not want. They wanted Elizabeth Warren, or they wanted Bernie Sanders. So can he still build those bridges to the Bernie voters, to the progressives, and to the young voters in a way that will help Hillary Clinton shore up that part of the party?
Rosemary, you've already betrayed that the bar is very low for you in terms of what gets you excited about tonight, but get us excited about tonight. What are you looking for?
Well, I mean, I agree on all those points with Louisa, obviously from down there and her vantage point. I would say that the one thing I would watch for Tim Kaine to do, though, is maybe some of the dirty work, right? Some of the stuff that they don't necessarily want Hillary Clinton doing. I'm not sure how much he's going to win over some of those people that Louisa's talking about. So if he can't win them over, maybe he can do more damage to Donald Trump. And obviously the tax returns story continues to be an issue. I think there's an easy way into that story, given that Pence has released his tax returns as opposed to Donald Trump. So to expose that, to remind people that that still hasn't happened, and then just to put some of those things out there that have been in the news over the past couple of days, whether it be the tax returns, the New York State attorney crashing down on his charitable foundation, to remind people of some of the weaknesses of Trump without necessarily having to do much damage to Pence at all.
Bridget, you're here in our newsroom, obviously, in Vancouver. You know a lot about politics. You were a reporter for a long, long time. You worked with Premier Campbell here in British Columbia. But like all of us, you've never seen a campaign like this. And so as you think of what's happened over the last few months, what are your expectations for tonight?
Well, I think when you look at a vice presidential debate, usually, it's not particularly consequential because we were all looking at the top runners. But I think for this one tonight, it's not only about Mike Pence having to rationalize Donald Trump's behavior, but it's also taking a look at Tim Kaine and saying, wait a minute, does he have the gravitas that's needed in case he has to step up and be president? And if you look back historically, there's been about 14 times where vice presidents have had to step up. Death, illness, also votes after the fact. So there's a good chance that one or the other could have to step up when you look at the ages of both Trump and Clinton, 70 and almost 69. So I think people are looking at these two candidates saying, could they do the job if they had to? And really, I think, though, the pressure is really on Mike Pence. Can he rationalize what Donald Trump has been doing and saying? I don't know that anybody can.
Mike, we know that these vice presidential debates may not seem like they really matter, especially going into them. Is there anything about what might happen over the next, throughout this evening that will matter to you?
Well, Ian, there's this great quote by one of FDR's vice presidents, and he said the vice presidency is about as useful as a bucket of warm spit. Well, the fact of the matter is that in the last 40 years, the vice presidency, as Bridget alluded to, has become very consequential. And so we have two presidential candidates here who are 69 and 70 years of age. These guys matter because, as Bridget noted, presidents die, presidents resign, so they need to be ready to take on the task. But I think what we'll see tonight really are Kane and Pence, two very affable guys you'd like to stand around a barbecue with, talking past one another. They're going to be going at the other one's running mate. And really, as much as these two can, I think what they bring to this tonight in this election is trying to appeal to those moderate voters, those undecided voters, particularly in states like Ohio, where I'm from, Pennsylvania, next door to Indiana is Ohio, as I mentioned. These are states where people are still deciding, and they're sort of moderate. They're not too socially conservative. They want people that they can relate to. And so these two guys tonight have a big job, because Trump and Hillary Clinton have not come across as very relatable and likable. So I think the stakes are very high tonight.
Louisa, sometimes I think it's more than just thinking. We all realize that we're all in a bubble. We're in this political bubble, right? We follow these things as journalists really closely. The people in the political communities obviously follow it very closely. Outside of that bubble, I mean, Trump obviously has a surprising amount of support for those of us from Canada. It seems surprising. Outside of that bubble, how will what happens tonight translate to the average American? How will they even get the message?
Well, I think there's two parts to this. One is, what impact does this have on the race at this particular moment on the news cycle? And what was so remarkable, Ian, about the last debate was, okay, Trump had a weaker debate than Hillary. He was on the defensive, and she did a much better job than he did there. But it was after the debate that he cratered, that he spent his time having a Twitter war with a former beauty queen contestant and insulting her and doubling down on it, saying, that she gained the weight. He had to make, it was just ridiculous. So it's the news cycle afterwards that has an impact on these incredibly volatile polls. Let's not forget, going into that last debate, this race was completely tied. It was so close. And that debate allowed Hillary Clinton to really take the momentum and shift the storyline away from, oh my gosh, she's losing, to suddenly she's ahead in the swing states, she's ahead in the general. So that's the opportunity at the debate. Can something happen here that just completely changes the subject away from the fact that Donald Trump has more or less admitted that he didn't pay taxes, that he won't release his taxes? There's something that Pence could do to change the conversation. And that will filter out through the news cycle, through television. They'll replay the clips. They're looking for those wonderful moments, right, that go viral. Will there be a moment like that will change what we're talking about and change it to be talking about Hillary Clinton instead of Donald Trump?
And Louisa is absolutely right there, where the pressure is more on Pence than it is on Kane to be able to deliver some sort of blow or some sort of zinger that will stick out more than what Trump's behavior and what he's been saying in the media. And as he's sliding in the polls, this is the opportunity for the Republicans to do this. But whether they can deliver, it's a pretty big, I think it's a pretty big ask of Mike Pence to be able to neutralize any of the comments that Donald Trump has made.
All right, so all of you, just quickly, you can jump in, Rosemary.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you mentioned that Trump is going to be live tweeting. He has a problem with Twitter, right? He has these reactive moments. So I think Kane is going to be looking for ways to provoke Trump at, on his iPhone or his BlackBerry and get him tweeting some of these things that have caused him problems in the past week.
I know, we are all so excited. As soon as we heard about the live tweeting, we had smartphones in hand. We can't wait. Last word, at least for now, to Mike.
Ian, in the history of these debates, presidential and vice presidential debates, they are lost, not won. So we're going to be looking for gaffes. We're going to be looking for dissonance, someone to lose this debate. My bet, these guys are very polished. They're very prepared. I think we're going to see very solid performances from each of them.
It is really fun talking to all four of you. Thank you for this, and we'll have a quick last word from you just before the debate starts in obviously less than an hour. Thanks so much.